has heard the shrill cry of that little green Muppet as he calls the Muppet Show to order. It's the Muppet Show! Yay! But not many people know about the hand that controls the frog, or the man that controls the hand that controls the frog. I grew up watching Jim Henson's movies a lot as a child. I always loved all of the Muppet Show and the Muppet movies and the Great Muppet Caper and the Dark Crystal. But I never really researched Jim Henson until now. And he grew up and shaped this generation of people that not many people know about. Shaping a generation is not an easy thing to do, and it definitely was a hard task for Jim Henson to take on. So today I'm going to study through the life, the legacy, and the movies that Jim Henson has created. He was born September 24th in 1936 in Greenville, Mississippi. He then moved to Leland, Mississippi, and continued to grow up there. While growing up, he was a big fan of Bert Tillstrom, a puppeteer on the TV screen. He always found himself watching the television and listening to Bert Tillstrom. It inspired him greatly to continue making puppets in high school. In high school, he started making puppets for a show called the Junior Morning Show on the news for the local news channel. It did not really inspire him to create anything, but it did continue to make him want to go to college for puppetry, which is what he did. He went to college for commercial puppetry, and while in college made a show called Sam and Friends, which was a prototype for many of his future creations. According to James Collins in his article for the Times Magazine, Jim Henson, A Cover Story, he created Kermit the Frog for the first time during this show. Kermit the Frog was very different in this show, however. He wasn't sassy and he wasn't quiet. He was a little bit more mean, and he didn't yet feel like the main character of the Muppets. He took a background to Sam and wasn't one of the main friends. But later, as Jim Henson found himself, so did Kermit. In 1961, the show had to be canceled because he just couldn't find a way of keeping the show going. But it allowed for much experimentation for Jim Henson. It allowed him to work with puppetry in ways that hadn't been seen before. He used felt where others used wood, and he experimented with the puppets on the TV screen in a way that hadn't been used before. While working on Sam and Friends, he met a woman named Jane Nabel, who also had a similar desire and love for puppetry. He fell in love with her and found a lot of inspiration in her, and soon married her in 1959. He didn't go immediately into the Muppets post Sam and Friends. He wasn't entirely sure where he wanted to go, so he tried working with commercial puppets for a while. He used a lot of late night exposure on late night television and talk shows, and this eventually led to him making commercials for Wilkins Coffee. He brought a new look to commercials that hadn't really been seen yet. Commercials before then had been very serious and not funny, but he thought, what if we add slapstick comedy? So his puppets threw things at each other and always had complaints about the coffee until they got hit in the face with a pie. And then they decided that maybe the coffee wouldn't be so bad after all. According to Peter Mailer in an article for the Beaver magazine called Jim Henson's Journey, in 1963 he moved to New York to start Muppets Incorporated with his wife. Although after a year of working for Muppet Incorporated, Jane Nabel decided that she wanted to take a step back and take time for their children. So Jim Henson was forced to hire someone else. Come in Frank Oz, his best friend until his death in 1990. Frank Oz and Jim Henson created some of the most amazing things for the Muppets, including some of the important duos such as Ernie and Bert and Kermit and Miss Piggy. While working on Muppets Incorporated, he decided to start working again on talk shows. This time he took a stage at the front of the Jimmy Dean Show, creating a Muppet named Ralph, who was a dog that played the piano. The Jimmy Dean Show helped to further his importance and helped other people to take notice of him. So in 1969, Sesame Street reached out to him. Sesame Street at the time focused mainly on people actors and wanted a few puppets off to the side. But after a few years of performing, they realized that the puppets were really where the show was. So the producer of the show asked Jim Henson to take over. And Jim Henson used his puppets to make the main part of Sesame Street. Although Jim Henson found himself worried that his company was just becoming for kids. He didn't want puppets to just seem like something that only kids could enjoy. So in 1975 and 1976, he brought his puppets to Saturday Night Live, and it didn't go well. People did not like seeing the puppets used for adult humor, and neither did the writers. They quickly turned him away after a year and said, puppets are just not for adults. But that wasn't going to stop him. Later that year, he changed his tune to The Muppet Show. He started trying to ask American television if they wanted to perform it, but was quickly told no. So then he asked British television, and British television was much more likely to do it. So in 1976, he started filming The Muppet Show. It was a great hit. Adults, children, and everyone seemed to just love the show. It appealed to children, to adults, just to everybody. So in 1979, he changed his tune a third time, this time trying to make films. In 1979, he released The Muppet Movie, and it did really well. He did really well with it, and so he decided to change over to just doing movies. He started releasing movies of his own and also helped George Lucas in creating the Star Wars Yoda puppet. And continued to make movies with Frank Oz, including more Muppet movies like The Muppet Caper and The Dark Crystal. In 1989, he sold the Jim Henson Company to the Walt Disney Company to continue his legacy. And Walt Disney continued to keep him alive even after his death in 1990. He had 5 children, though he divorced his wife in 1986 because his wife said that he cared too much about his work and less about his family. His daughter quotes saying, "He raised an entire generation of children, he just forgot to raise his own." After he passed away in 1990, they continued to further his legacy. His own children continuing to make puppets and movies, and the Disney Company continuing to make movies, TV shows, even as recently as 2020. Today I have informed you about the life and legacy of Jim Henson, and he pushed the boundaries of a generation. He pushed the boundaries of commercials and of everything that existed at that point in time. He created a new type of commercials, a new type of movies, and a new type of inspiration for everyone that came after him.